Hello and welcome. In this video, we'll explore and evaluate a major fiscal policy initiative from South Korea's Conservative People Power Party, a political group known for its market-oriented economic stance. We'll break down what their policies are, why they propose them, who benefits or loses, and how these measures interact with monetary policy. Along the way, I'll use key economic graphs, the aggregate demand and supply, AD-AS model, and the loanable funds market, to clearly illustrate how these fiscal decisions can affect the entire economy. The People Power Party promotes a combination of fiscal conservatism, deregulation, and investment in advanced technologies like AI and semiconductors. One of their core fiscal policies is corporate tax cuts and deregulation to stimulate private sector investment. The reasoning is straightforward. By reducing taxes and removing business restrictions, companies will be more likely to expand operations, hire workers, and innovate. The PPP believes that economic growth is best driven by the private sector, not public spending, and that innovation is the key to maintaining South Korea's competitive edge in the global market. Before continuing, let's define three important terms that will help us better understand this analysis. Fiscal conservatism, an economic philosophy favoring low government spending, reduced debt, and balanced budgets, aiming to limit government intervention in the economy. Deregulation, the process of reducing or eliminating government rules and restrictions on businesses, with the goal of increasing efficiency and competition. Monetary policy, the set of actions taken by a country's central bank to control the money supply and interest rates in order to achieve macroeconomic objectives like stable prices and economic growth. On the surface, this policy has clear advantages. Lowering corporate taxes can incentivize investment and job creation, particularly in high-tech industries where South Korea already leads. Deregulation can cut red tape, making it easier for startups and small businesses to scale up. However, there are also downsides. Fiscal conservatism may lead to cuts in welfare programs or public infrastructure, which disproportionately affect lower-income groups. Deregulation, if too aggressive, can undermine worker protections and environmental standards. Moreover, corporate tax cuts often benefit large firms and wealthy investors more than everyday citizens, potentially exacerbating income inequality. This fiscal policy is likely to produce at least two notable effects on the economy. First, it will likely cause an increase in aggregate demand, as businesses hire more workers and invest in production, and consumers, fueled by rising employment, spend more. This is shown in the AD-AS graph, where the AD curve shifts rightward, leading to higher real GDP and possibly moderate inflation. The second effect is a greater demand for loanable funds as businesses seek financing to expand, illustrated by a rightward shift in the demand curve on the loanable funds market graph. Interest rates may rise slightly unless offset by a simultaneous increase in savings or reduced government borrowing. The groups most positively affected are corporations, tech entrepreneurs, and skilled workers in growing sectors like AI and semiconductors. On the other hand, public sector workers, lower-income households, and those reliant on social programs may see fewer benefits or even suffer from spending cuts. This highlights the distributional impact of the policy. It's pro-growth but not necessarily pro-equity. If I were in charge of monetary policy at the Bank of Korea, I would adopt a cautious but growth-supportive stance in response to these fiscal policies. Assuming inflation remains moderate, I would maintain neutral to slightly expansionary monetary policy, keeping interest rates relatively low to support investment, but prepared to raise them if inflation expectations rise. In other words, I would support the fiscal policy in the short term because it stimulates economic growth and innovation, but I'd remain vigilant against potential overheating. If inflation were to accelerate due to a rapid AD shift, I'd implement a tightening strategy by gradually raising interest rates to prevent price instability. To better understand this, let's look at the aggregate demand and supply graph. As corporate tax cuts and tech investments kick in, aggregate demand increases, shifting the curve to the right. This means higher output and employment. Meanwhile, as productivity rises due to tech gains, the short-run aggregate supply may also shift rightward, potentially dampening inflation. In an ideal scenario, these dual shifts lead to non-inflationary growth. a policymaker's dream. Now take a look at the loanable funds market graph. Here we can see how reduced government borrowing, a result of fiscal conservatism, can shift the supply of loanable funds to the right. Simultaneously, increased business demand for investment pushes the demand curve right. The new equilibrium may feature a modest rise in interest rates or keep them stable depending on the strength of these shifts. This graph supports our case that the fiscal policy can foster investment while remaining manageable through prudent monetary intervention. To wrap up, the People Power Party's fiscal strategy has the potential to accelerate South Korea's economic growth and global competitiveness, particularly in high-tech industries. However, the benefits are unevenly distributed and may widen social inequalities. A responsive monetary policy, balancing growth with price stability, can help maximize the advantages while minimizing the risks. If well managed, the end effect on the economy could be a sustained expansion in output and employment, driven by private investment and technological advancement, with inflation kept under control through timely monetary adjustments.